Um, Calling the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy to order. Good morning to all who's tuning in the audience and who's also via Zoom. We're going to move straight to the agenda. First agenda item, we're going to be hearing from the mayor, newly elected Mayor Warren, Ms. Lori Stone, via Zoom.
Am I coming through?
Yes.
I would like to thank the chair of the committee and thank you for the committee members for the opportunity to address the Eagles Appropriation Committee today. I'm proud to be back. It's good to see some of my colleagues in my new capacity as mayor of Warren. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to issue today on our wastewater treatment incinerator and the quest for assistance in being able to upgrade the technology to some next generation technology. A couple years ago, our community participated in a critical infrastructure evaluation, and one of our wastewater treatment incinerator was identified as a piece of critical infrastructure that has a shorter life expectancy, and we need to address probably within the next 5 years. And so we began looking into what our options were for addressing wastewater treatment in our community. There's only a handful of approaches, but our director at the time identified some next level. It's a drying and incineration technology that would, with upgrades, improve our air quality. It would address the needs of our community. And I will leave the science to the scientists. Our current director, Donna Dordeski, can give you a high level overview of what this technology does. But we do know it's an expensive piece. It's going to run our community anywhere from 75 million that was identified several years ago to 100 million. It's a significant investment for a community our size. We've been good actors. We've been proactive. We've looked at our options, and believe it or not, of what's out there, this technology still continues to be cost effective for our community. And so, our appeal to the state legislature is for some assistance. Off the bat, we sought out some relief with partnering with Eagle on SRF funding. We were not on the final list the last two go rounds. There's still hope. If that is a viable possibility, we would entertain that. We have the opportunity to be the proving ground as a pilot program for this technology. We know that as different options for wastewater treatment have been considered, there's been some shifting perspectives on what are best practices. And we believe that we could prove that this technology is something that needs to be more widely implemented. Right now, there is a few places. I believe it's Buffalo, Minnesota. There is somewhere in, I can't remember which country in Europe, but this technology is available. It's out there. It's being utilized, but it's being underutilized. And our community would have the opportunity to prove it. At the very least, we would hope for some consideration and assistance in funding this technology. It's a big ask, it's a big lift for our community, and any assistance would be appreciated. That's my appeal, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you, Mayor Stone, for your testimony. One thing I forgot to do, so excited to get this meeting off the ground, is to call the roll for attendance. So I'm gonna have the clerk call the roll before we take questions from committee members.
Chair Hood. Representative McKinney.
Here.
Representative Braybeck.
Here.
Representative Weiss.
Here.
Representative Martis.
Here.
Representative Beeson.
said he couldn't unmute himself.
Representative Cavett. Representative Schutte.
Here.
Mr. Chair, there are 5 members present.
Thank you. And I know Representative Beeson has some technical difficulties with his mute button, so we'll reflect that in the minutes. So any questions from members around Mayor Stone's testimony? No? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Appreciate you. Next on the agenda item, we're going to hear from Donna Dordowski. She is the City of Warren Director of Wastewater Treatment. She'll be joining us via Zoom.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Dordowski. I represent City of Warren Wastewater Treatment Plan in the capacity of sanitary engineer. First and foremost, I would like to express my thank you to the chair of the committee and the committee members. To begin my brief update, I would like to share with a very brief presentation to maybe easier visualize the technology that we're trying to implement for our community. I will have a small presentation, and in the middle of it, I would like to break that and play a 45-second video that will show just a generic concept of the proposed system that we're discussing here. And then we'll revert back to the presentation. After that, I'll be able to answer any questions that the committee members may have as a result. If there is any technical issues on my end, please let me know, and I will be able to stop and address those. If I could share the screen. Are you able to see
Yes.
my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. To start this brief update, I would like to introduce the visual picture of where our facility is located. We're located in the southeast of Michigan, in the city of Warren, at the intersection, or just east of the intersection of 14 Mile Road and Van Dyke. And we're surrounded by a residential community, as you can see on this particular picture. The City of Warren wastewater treatment plant is servicing community of over 137,000 residents. It was built originally in 1957 with numerous expansions and additions following the original construction. The design capacity of our plant, wastewater treatment plant, is 50 million gallons per day treatment. Typically, we run or process on a dry day about 22 million gallons per day. But we're able to handle peak flows on a wet weather day when we have rain events up to 100 million gallons per day. On site, we do have existing 50 million gallon detention basin. We're also in the process of constructing a new 22 million gallon detention basin, which is located in the upper section of our collection system, and that basin is known as the Stevens Basin. The purpose of that basin is to help us alleviate the sanitary sewer overflows that City of Warren has been experiencing over last decades, being that we're so developed, and eliminate or reduce or even eliminate those overflows. We also have one pump station that had been recently rehabilitated. We increased the pumping capacity of that station to 91 million gallons per day of pumping capacity. The cost that had been expended for just that improvement was about $12 million. On site at the 14 Mile location, the main plant, we do have an existing incinerator, which was built after the original plant was constructed. The incinerator was built between 1971 and I think it was put, my understanding, from records, it was put in for operation in 1972. As part of our collection, sanitary sewer collection system that conveys the sanitary sewer flows into the plant, we have nearly 500 miles of sanitary sewer piping that varies from size of anywhere from 8-inch to as large as 84-inch, and varies in age from early 1900s to the current. We don't have much new construction because we're so developed. There's more of those are replacements and rehabilitations. But yes, the 500 miles for the city of Warren size, we're about 34 and a half miles square. It is pretty substantial when it comes to maintenance and upkeep of that collection sewer system. The multiple heart incinerator that we currently have at the main treatment plant that provides incineration of the biosolids that are resultant from the treatment processes of the wastewater that comes to the plant is known as a multi-heart incinerator, and it has 10 hearts. It was constructed in 1972, designed for processing. It was designed for continuous operation. We typically run it about 4.5 days, 24 hours, 4.5 days a week, 24 hours. There was usually a 2-day break for either maintenance or accumulation of the flows that come to our system, but generally it's 4.5 days a week. Average annual dry tons that are being incinerated by this equipment, they range from 47,050, anywhere between 4,750 to as much as 6,000 tons a year. All depends on how wet the year can be. Being that it's been in service for over 52 years, or 50 years, it has come to or outlived its useful life. We have been experiencing more frequent and more significant failures of the equipment. The recent one that just occurred this past December of 2023, it took us when one of the hearts collapsed onto the one that's located below. It completely shut down the incinerator. It took us 4 months to repair it, and the cost of that repair was nearly $750,000. The issue with maintenance and repairs that we are experiencing more and more frequently is also affected by increased inability to obtain the parts that are needed to replace it, being that this equipment is so old. There is extensive and there's very few vendors that actually provide maintenance for that process. It's becoming more and more difficult. Back in 2018, when the city of Warren obtained funding for SAW grant and wastewater asset management plan, the city of Warren began investigations and evaluations of alternate options for the replacement and or upgrades of the existing dryer incineration system that we currently have. Our city's desire is to maintain incineration as its method of solid disposal. We have evaluated multiple options of currently available technologies for biosolids management. And as a result of those investigations, it was determined that the cost of alternates that are currently existing was significantly higher than the traditional dryer furnace option. Upon examination of the options that are available currently, the selection was narrowed down to a dryer furnace option that's known as a Biocon ERS system, which is manufactured by Kruger Veolia. And I would like to, at this point, maybe jump into the video so that I can quickly run this 45-second video if possible.
Yes, go ahead.
Pardon me?
I said yes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just it should play. Thank you. The proposed biocon energy recovery system, as you saw on a quick video, um, solution from Veolia, provides a replacement system for the existing multiple heart incinerator that we currently have. The new system consists of two major complete process units, which receive dewatered wastewater treated sludge, which is then dried to produce Class A biosolids. Those biosolids are then combusted in small furnace, leaving a small amount of residual ash in quantities that are very similar to the process that we're currently using, which is the multi-heart incinerator system. The Biocon ERS technology we're proposing to be used for the project for this project and improvement for the city of Warren features advanced energy recovery capabilities and incorporates state-of-the-art emission controls, which enable the system to operate with much higher operating efficiencies and much lower emission levels that typical multi-hearth incinerator has. Based on the average conditions for City of Warren treatment plant, the Biocon ERS system as proposed should operate in a net neutral or even net positive energy condition, which means that during normal operation, the system would operate with minimal or possibly even without need to add natural gas. This is accomplished with recovery of the heat released in the furnace. The ERS system, which uses the heat to dry the dewatered solids in that particular step of the process. Under the plan improvement dewatering system, the performance is expected. The Biocon's ERS system should provide surplus energy, which then could be used for other purposes, such as building heating, preheating of other needs in a plant. There's also an extensive state-of-the-art emission controls that comes at the back end of that system that takes care of reduction of emission gases such as nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide, and mainly reduction of carbon emissions, which are very problematic. And the goal is to reduce those as much as possible. Each train of the equipment, which will actually provide a redundancy for the City of Warren system, will be equipped with state-of-the-art combination of emission control units, which intend to eliminate the pollution that would be discharged from that system into the environment. And most of all, the combination of the pollution control technology that serves to tightly control the emissions is expected to be well below the most stringent limits that are currently in effect under state and federal guidelines. The unique design of the Biocon ERS system with the drying of the dewatered solids prior to the combustion processes allows for the second stage combustion step of the process to be operated at conditions where maximum destruction of any incoming PFAS contaminants occurs. To summarize this, what happens is like our existing process when we incinerate our solids, they're about 17% moisture. The new system would dry it to like 92 in the 90s percentile of it. So, and with the higher temperatures where the incinerator occurs, that's where the PFAS destruction occurs. There are numerous studies right now. There's a lot more than has been in the last couple of years, which are providing substantial information confirming that great potential of PFAS destruction as part of this process. It's a very new field where it is problematic field. We all know that PFAS is a major pollutant that is experienced all over the country, and we're trying to be pioneers in that field to address that issue as early as possible and as cautiously as possible as well. Based on the expected reduction of natural gases for this process as compared to the existing multi-heart incinerator, a substantial reduction of carbon emissions is achievable and expected. Energy savings from the reduced use of natural gas are significant. The amount that we evaluated based on average uses of the gas at our facility as compared to the new system would result in net savings of about $563,000 on an annual basis. And that's based on the average use or usage as compared to 2022. That's where we started the investigations and studies for that comparison of usage of the utilities. Continued on-site cake handling. With this new process, there would not be a need to remove the cake disposal off-site. Most of it would be with the increased drying and combustion of it through this furnace process that would be mainly burn off, and there would not be a need for hauling of the cake off the site. During this last failure that we experienced, or equipment breakdown, what we had back in December of 2023, we were hauling continuously each day, 5 days a week, at least 3 double trailers of cake that was not able to be incinerated because our furnace failed and we were undergoing the repairs. The cost itself per each day for hauling out of the cake from our facility to the landfill was about $7,000 per day. That's in addition to the traffic through the residential neighborhoods and then further down the other communities to make it to the landfill. It was very significant. The other major component or benefit of the use of Biocon ERS technologies is the green benefits and mainly lower carbon footprint. With reduced natural gas usage and the additional recovered energy that is possible and expected from that system, the proposed solution should offset fossil fuel consumption and result in a lower overall carbon footprint for the Warren plant. A projected reduction of nearly 4,400 tons of carbon emissions per year, which is equivalent to removing about 865 cars from the road, or eliminating the power generation to about 585 households. Another benefit of the Biocon ERS technologies is the reduction of PFAS and other contaminants of concern, which I mentioned before, to below regulated limits in the state of Michigan. And last but not least, based on the efficient, safe, robust, and proven technologies of Veolia's Biocon ERS system, The solution as proposed will provide the highest operating efficiencies and include state-of-the-art, safe, robust, and proven technology for recovering energy while operating in highly automated fashion and ensuring that solid volume is reduced, contaminant levels reduced, and pathogen destroyed during that process. Veolia's system is a pioneer system in the United States. However, it is commonly used in Europe with many locations, many years of usage. There are several facilities within within the United States where they're using the dryer system, but not the furnace system yet. The city of Warren would be the pioneer in that aspect of technology, being where both of the dryer and furnace are being combined into one system that would do the complete treatment of drying the solids and incineration of those. We're very excited about this. We have been diligently working on permitting processing through state of Michigan. As recently as last month, we have provided additional comments that Eagle has requested of us, and we're working with the manufacturer and multiple consultants to assist us in with this process. And we think that with it is a very promising system, and we're very excited to be pioneers in that field. And hopefully that could expand to other communities within not only state of Michigan, but also the United States. In summary, the environmental impacts of this system, emission limits and regulations. We can meet the most stringent sewage sludge incineration limits set forth by the EPA. More energy efficient biosolids management with energy recovery system, PFAS destruction potential, reduction in carbon footprint, significant reduction of fuel consumption, mainly natural gas, and also providing the city of Warren need for redundancy by supplying multiple dryers. Currently, we do not have a backup system, which typically is expected in wastewater treatment processes. And when our existing multi-heart incinerator goes down, there is no other option except hauling the sludge offsite. With this new system, we would have 2 trains of identical processes, which would allow us to continuously process the sewage without any interruption if one train is being under maintenance, or if there's increased flows coming to the plant. There should not be it should be very limited downtime as a result of that. And that would conclude my brief presentation, and I would greatly, I'm open for any questions that committee members might have.
Thank you, Donna. Appreciate you going in depth and for your presentation. I'm going to open up to questions from the members, if anyone has any. Nope. Okay. Well, I just got a couple questions. You know, when I found out about incinerators, when I did some research and realized, you know, this is a different type of incinerator than what is used in Kent County, and then also what was decommissioned a few years in the Detroit area under the leadership of the late, great Isaac Robinson, former state rep out of Detroit and Hamtramck. But can you kind of touch on, you know, you spoke about, you know, this is not necessarily emitting carbon emissions like a normal incinerator would, but in terms of the PFAS, because we're dealing with wastewater, can you kind of touch on like what does like the term mean in terms of, you know, maximum PFAS reduction or capture when you're looking at this new technology for the wastewater treatment incinerator?
Well, the PFAS are some now everlasting pollutant because they're so hard to destruct. There has been many attempts and many various attempts to figure out how to destroy them, and a lot of it they come in from different forms of whether um, 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 we find them in water and sewage. In City of Warren in particular, the sewage that we get, we are well below the limits that are established by EPA. Um, However, that can change anytime too, and any technology that's being developed or implemented right now is to control and reduce and eliminate and treat and eliminate PFAS as much as possible, because the PFAS contamination is linked to health environment impacts, whether it's soils, vegetation, human, animal health, and so forth. And
Thank you. And then just to follow up, is there any vaporization of the PFAS or other key compounds when you're talking about the molecular breakdown of what's going on?
not with that system,
Okay.
because of the high temperatures that this system operates at. Incomplete combustion, yes, it can create a different carbon chains, which um, could result in another type of um, PFAS. But with the complete destruction of PFAS at the high temperatures, that does not happen.
Got it. Thank you so much for your time and again presentation. And I'm looking forward to working with you and figuring out how to learn more about what's going on in the city of Warren. So thank you again.
Certainly, thank you.
Just want to turn to the next agenda item, our last speaker for today in person. I know there was some construction going on, and she had a tough time coming up here, but she's here. Ms. Passion Murray, she's the founder of Detroit Dirt, and we're going to have her come out and give a presentation. Right there. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Because it's such a short amount of time, I can send you materials, but the goal of, me coming here today is just kind of to explain the establishment of Detroit Dirt and where I am currently. So, and first I want to say hello to everyone. So I got a chance to listen to some of the other speakers, and it's really interesting because I grew up on the west side of the state, and I grew up going to the landfills with my dad as a child, the late 80s, early 90s. And so after being involved with construction and dealing with materials and just managing and monitoring the build out on green building projects in Grand Rapids, I kind of took what I learned from my dad being a contractor had contracts with the city and the county in Kent County. And what was interesting as time went on, I realized that landfills could be replaced in many different ways. But I had to figure out how to build my own experiences. So it started off with wood, steel, plastics, you name it, with construction, and making sure I understood the value of those materials. So on a construction site, we were able to get the materials back to some of the producers who weren't used, and then some of it we repurposed and reused, like crushed concrete. That's where my journey really, truly begun. And then when I made the transition of bidding on contracts, because I used to be involved with aggregate as well, I moved to Detroit. And so what I found in that city was there was a lot of vacant land. The automotive community was starting to talk about, they were on the brink of dealing with bankruptcy, but there was a zero waste movement going on. And I happened to be one of the folks who took a prominent position and really gave my life to a movement around looking at organics diversion. Of course, with the automotive community, they were more focused on, steel, plastics, but I was able to, create a pathway in that community where I said, if you guys are feeding thousands of people every day, we have all this vacant land, there's some intersection here, and then the Detroit Zoological Society had a bunch of manure, and they needed to dispose of that. So I came up with this concept of, you know, composting isn't new. We've been doing this since the beginning of civilization. But what was a different approach, or a unique approach, was looking at urban composting, because the yard waste, the manures at some of the facilities where horses were staged, Henry Ford, Greenfield Village, if you looked at and mapped out the city on where these materials were going, 30, 40 miles outside of the city and being disposed in a landfill or going to the incinerator, I'm a huge advocate of in-vessel technology, anaerobic digestion, biodigesters. I have something to do with the zoo investing in their biodigester. But for about 10 years, I took spent grain from breweries, liquor distributors, food, anybody that had anything to do with organics. What my job was is to map out and show that we could change the carbon footprint of the city by keeping materials in the city, repurposing and reusing them, processing them, and then getting them back to urban farmers or whomever, landscapers, whoever needed it. Because within that circular economy, when you look at a municipality that has thousands of tons of any material, especially yard waste, we shouldn't be sending it to an incinerator or a landfill. We should be processing and manufacturing that. And why? One, brownfields are all over the country. So we could be remediating the soils. We could use soil as a storage for water, for retention. I can go really deep into the matters of composting. But today, I just want everyone to think about when you have these natural resources and they're mismanaged and they're not managed properly, then they're going to be disposed of and wasted. But we have corporations, small businesses, whomever, billions of dollars are being wasted every day. Why? Because people aren't thinking about how to develop markets around this. Now, that leads to my relationship with the University of Michigan, where we're looking at pyrolysis and certain technologies that we can process organic material. But these feedstocks are going to be very imperative, especially when you look at the airlines. Delta Airlines, United, they're starting to use sustainable aviation fuels. So when you really look at the market of how to produce compost, soils, soil amendments, all this is coming from managing materials properly, using the right technologies, investing in infrastructure that's going to fuel, in the right way, new economy. Billions of dollars. So when you really break this thing down and look at the, and analyze, what does composting really mean? Well, it means taking organic materials such as manure and creating manure management. It means taking wasted food that's not really waste, that's a resource, and just looking at how do we develop these markets. And that's where I pretty much landed today. So I went from materials management with construction, looking at how to help the urban farming community in Detroit. And then the bigger picture was, how do we develop markets around this? Because one, the CO2 reduction alone, when you bury food waste, that's one of the largest contributors globally to methane. So, these practices, they're antiquated of what you see a lot of folks doing currently. But it's a matter of investing in technology. And what I introduced was pilots. I mean, that's how I ran everything in the beginning with whatever relationship I had. So I was able, to bring this to a conclusion, I was able to take something as simple as composting with General Motors, Detroit Zoological Society, and a multitude of other businesses, Blue Cross Blue Shield, utilize that material within a certain footprint and sell it back to the community. That's where the economics comes in as well, is landscapers, urban farmers, people who love to garden. We helped create a foundation of principles that I believe that model could be replicated anywhere. And that's where I spend half my time out on the road going around the country and sometimes abroad, helping people to understand how to build communities around waste diversion and waste reduction. But I think all in all, the biggest accomplishment here that I've achieved is a few areas. One, being able to help create curriculum for K through 12 schools so you have more younger children understanding what their roles can be in this climate change movement. The other is getting some of the leaders in the energy transition to look at biofuels and what markets, what products can we sell, and how do we grow and scale this model, right? And the other is being in a room like this or going to various college campuses. And I had to, Senator Stabenow introduced me to the Senate floor, and I had to talk about the importance of infrastructure. So again, something that started as a small model in a community that was positive, getting people to see how it impacted the community, that model can be replicated, and the education and bringing awareness to the issue is something for me that I never imagined, especially impacting K through 12 schools and college campuses. Because when I started off on this road 13, 14 years ago, half of these sustainability programs at these prestigious schools didn't even exist. But there were people like me who worked with others in the energy transition to roll out plans that made sense for policy as well as economics. And then the social, we can go on and on about the social impacts. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Detroit Dirt was a composting company that recycled and managed food waste and created a movement. And I'm very grateful to be in this position of achieving those goals. We have a long ways to go of getting back into that driving seat and helping communities, but I think overall we're starting to see policy changes around the country, which I'm really excited about. And then the investment in infrastructure, that's going to be the key. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Passion. Any questions from members? No, I just got one question, and that is, what can we do as a state to try to encourage, whether it's here in the legislature or just period in terms of policy, whether it's dollars or policy, encourage our state to move towards composting, because, we're trying to do it in terms of the recycling side of things, right? We're doing the best we can, but we can be doing a little bit better. But in terms of composting, I know a lot of folks still don't really compost. It's not like a day-to-day thing for folks or a mindset. So what can we do in your view to try to encourage that?
Yeah, so on a local level, I think ordinances are going to be key in most cities and counties or townships, because once you put ordinances in place that when you educate the public on the value of food or food waste, there's an automatic audit that begins to happen. So I started with corporations, but now the city of Detroit and others are looking at how to do curbside. Well, if we start changing the ordinances on a local level, of course, I think that's the first. But I think running pilots to show for a specific amount of time the benefit of the community as well. But I think on the state level, I obviously support legislation that would ban at some point food waste from even going to the landfills, because why would we continue to do something that's antiquated, that's a part of a larger issue within climate change? So if we change the laws and we at least take baby steps or incremental steps with changing policy, at least it will incorporate and integrate the community in a way where let's start with businesses, let's start with residential, and roll out a plan where the pilots, you designate certain areas that want to participate. I've done that, and I know that it works. But if we have legislation that supports the actual work and it's mandated, that becomes something completely different. Think about banning smoking inside of a building or putting your seatbelt on. We have to look at, taking our time. I'm not saying turn the switch overnight, but I am saying legislation and ordinances would help tremendously. Because if we're held accountable for how we manage the waste stream, the better off our communities will be and benefit. I mean, when you talk about incineration and how many people were sick from a public health perspective, when we start educating and breaking all of the reasons why, you know, the benefits as a community of public-private partnerships, of why we need to do this, then we start talking about our health. We start talking about the value economically. So if we could start somewhere, you know, with designating certain areas around the state to actually participate in something like this, I think that that would move mountains at this point. But I definitely support legislation. And again, education is imperative. You can't have enough technical assistance programs supporting businesses and helping them get the resources they need to understand what climate change is, what climate resiliency is, what adaptation is, and then how does climate play, you know, how does composting play a role in that? Well, you're reducing, it's the low-hanging fruit. You're reducing the CO2 by keeping it out of the landfills simply by managing it properly. That's a huge shift in a community in itself, to be able to have decentralized locations that can process this. And I ran trials with the Goodwill for manufacturing, packaging, selling cartons of it, and selling wholesale. So there's a multitude of things, and if you need me to help, I'm here and willing to help roll that out. Because I have, you know, my connections and my network is in California, out on the West Coast, in the South, everywhere. I've tried to help as many people as possible. And California just has a lot of policies, whether it's by default or because of the weather. They have a lot of policies that have truly benefited San Francisco, but you got the Minnesotas, you have different communities, you know, that Baltimore and the DC area, you have different folks who, they have proven track records that if the law changes, the effects and impacts are tremendous. Yeah.
Thank you, Passion. Seriously, for being able to come up here. I know traffic is crazy. We're fixing the roads, as you can imagine. Trying. But do want to just say, yes, I'm going to take you up on that offer. So be on the lookout as we put together some legislation around composting and things of that nature. With that being said, just wanted to put this out there. I want to give a shout out to our chair, Rachel Hood. She's out there serving the state at the Great Lakes Legislative Conference as we speak, and so she could not be here. So I'm filling in her shoes as the chair for today. But with that being said, there's no further business coming. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
Thank you for inviting me too.
I have a quick question. Really
Go
quick
ahead.
Before we head out. So I know in South Oakland County we have SACRA, which does a really great job at providing yard waste disposal services, composting services, and even for membering communities who are members of SACRA. It's sort of like a two-way, because you can easily dispose and compost your waste, but then also member communities are provided with compost so that people who live in those communities can access free compost from their community centers or wherever they pick those up. Is the city of Detroit or any other surrounding communities that you know of looking at doing that? And is there anything that we could do at the state level to help kind of like incentivize and help communities in moving towards those sorts of models?
Yep, it is. The city of Detroit, the Green Task Force that's led by Councilman Benson, and then there's others within building safety and engineering. They are having conversation about rolling out a citywide plan. But I think they were waiting on also anticipating Part 115 and some of the legislation on the state level to change. But I definitely know the interest is there. During the pandemic, we slowed, Detroit Dirt did. And, but I've been encouraging others who are involved in composting to scale or to at least address the yard waste issue. And I think within the next year, we will see the city of Detroit rolling out programs with different companies to provide that service. But I think the Sacra has done a great job. And I know Ferndale is picking up compost now. Grand Rapids has different companies. That's where I'm headed now. But I'm starting to see the changes. I just think the incentives will, with creating ordinances and possibly looking at how we could allocate funds to get pilots going, I think that would be our next big step is, how do we allocate funds for infrastructure? Because I think that there should be at least some technology to help with processing the materials as well, instead of, just manually composting. I think if we could have couple of designated sites in the city, and then having a budget around what does that look like, where I can help out with as well, that will encourage the city to start ramping up their pilots for designated areas. Yep. Thank you.
Great question, Rep. Weiss. Any further questions? Okay, great. So there being no further business to come before the subcommittee, the meeting is now adjourned.